We are starting the financial committee meeting February 18th at 10:04. Roll call. I'm here. Bob Heffernan, Robin Davis, Kimberly Berlier, Amy Maresco, Mike Hogan is on Zoom. Carolyn Jones is here. Calvin is absent at the moment. And our one agenda item is to review, two items, review the minutes of our meeting on February 3, and then to discuss the budget proposed so that we can take it to the board at the end of this month for their review. So are there any questions or comments on the minutes from the February 3rd?
Looks like they're
Meeting.
so thorough, whoever we're thanking for that.
Be it AI or whatever.
Yeah, whatever, clear and
They're
thorough.
quite copious.
So if no objection,
Make a motion to
I'll
accept.
second that motion.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
And now we will move to the budget. And we have our in-house expert and financial manager ready to present.
All right, I'm gonna run through what you have in the packet. You should have 4 pages of notes by each utility behind the minutes. These correlate with the O&M budget.
Right.
Then you should have the GL accounts. And that also correlates with the O&M and it tells you what's in each category. That's just really for informational purposes.
Okay.
Question, what's the significance of the yellow highlighter?
We're gonna get to that.
Okay.
We're missing one item.
What?
And then after that, you're gonna get all the drafts. In case you don't wanna look at numbers and you wanna look at pictures.
Okay.
And you can see the comparisons from last year and the composition of the revenues and expenses.
Right,
Then is your O&M budget. And then the capital budget.
That was a black, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. All right.
And we were gonna start out with the capital budget.
Okay.
And I asked Robin very so nicely if he could run through the capital budget. For you guys.
He said.
And he said he would love to.
Okay, as you'll see, most of these items have been on this capital project, like, budget line items for several years now. Some of them shifted and moved and stuff.
So the green connotes that they're being worked on.
The
The
green
green
notes
notes, if
for
you look on
funding.
the back page, shows all funding. They correspond. That's, sorry,
So that's yours?
Yeah.
Goodness.
that with items that are being funded.
By somebody else.
as part of this budget?
Right, okay,
Yes.
Okay,
okay.
I think Austin used to have some color coded things that he used to like on his own with
Right.
everything meant. I don't know if he was still when he kind of knew. what
Yeah,
they
he
meant.
had yellow, orange, red,
okay,
and which is
okay.
just too much.
So, since you're on the last page all of a sudden,
Mhm.
and now I understand what the green is.
Mhm.
So, for 25, 26. So we have total of all projects, 9,467,000, and we have funding of 6.8, so we are short 2,667, is that
Yes.
okay?
That's why it says total less funding.
Yep.
And we're short on 2,667,500, right?
Right, and
Because
there
that'll
just
be out of
Two,
pocket.
two
Yeah.
million, six
there
sixty-seven.
are
Right.
3 pages.
Yep.
Right,
This one,
there's
and
the
on
front
back,
one, the back of that.
and then,
Yep.
okay.
I'm just.
Yep.
Right. I'm somewhat oriented.
Okay.
We got you.
We can go through these and as kind of the details you want. Like I said, most of these have been on here. We got the Alaska Avenue Waterline Project. This is in conjunction with a city project, the streets project that's happening just off of Cape and Open Drive. This also includes, you see once you get on the sewer, it's a sewer component and there is a no stormwater component.
I don't
To
think
the-
it's on.
Just water and sewer project. What this is to installation of a new water main along Alaska Avenue. It's like 140 feet. There is a home there now that's connected by an old water main. So as part of the development project that's happening also, it was decided that we were gonna go ahead and just try to move forward for the new water main also. And to put another fire hydrant down at the end of the line. So we have fire capabilities down there. Next one, Monroe Railroad, also a joint city DPW project. Ours does include water, sewer, and stormwater. This is like a two-phase project. I think Monroe is going first. If Ben, I think that's what Ben said.
I believe so.
Ben said Monroe was going first and then Railroad's coming second.
Tell me about that, just because I happen to live there.
Well, except for Bob's side of the road.
No, I mean,
No, I think
is it, what's this year to what's next year? It's on.
I think Monroe is starting, I think the first part is going to be the first thing done, because I think that's more what consistent with the city was looking to do. And then they were gonna do Railroad, so this year would be Monroe, all the work on Monroe. And then on Railroad would be the second phase of it. which
If
would
the
be-
city doesn't go forward with that project this year, then we're not going, it's a project that links with the city's
Correct.
decision and the city's first versus
Yep.
some other sequence or,
Correct.
okay,
In the previous 5 years, it had noted on there, Monroe Railroad on hold per
Okay.
city or something like that.
Right.
okay.
And Friday, in the budget conversations, the city's gonna focus in on CIP and resilience.
Yes.
So that might be one to listen into in case we hear something on this side that is
Okay.
a wrinkle
Mhm.
versus our.
Could I ask one more question about the numbers? The 9,467 is a total of all of the projects, not just the green,
No,
Correct.
no, it's everything on this
all
whole.
3 pages.
Yep.
Okay, and the difference, the 2,000,006 difference is how many of the non-green projects
Yes.
are, that's the sum of those.
Yeah, the non-green projects for water productions
Or
or
whatever, yeah,
come to 2.6.
right, okay.
Yep.
So it's not that the green is short the 2.6,
No,
right, we are fully funded to the 6.8 for the green projects.
Yes, the 6.8
It's
is
okay.
the full funding that we're gonna receive this year for the projects going on for
Right,
this
okay,
coming year.
thank you.
So does line item 6 to Richard's comment? Is it total less funding? Is that really what it is? I mean, it makes you first look at it.
I
Yeah, we
could
have a
rename,
deficit.
I could rename
Yes.
that as total payments out of pocket.
That's good.
Well,
Just,
the-
it looks like we're running a
Yes,
like you're-
deficit.
yeah, like you're
'cause-
short,
And the
yeah.
next question is like, where are you gonna get this money from?
Thank you.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it does come close to the deficit.
Yeah. I mean, I know it would have been in.
I mean,
Like
it's
it's called
polite and
difference,
said
but-
total less funding, but basically it's a tough. Okay.
I don't think it would work.
Total not yet funded.
Yeah.
I said total payments with BPW cash.
Okay.
That's clear. for the
Okay,
board.
okay.
Yeah, that's
Well,
good.
but that implies perhaps a commitment to spend the cash. And that's not actually what it's saying, is it?
Because it's contingent upon the other.
Well, it's listed. You know, at Scholastic Avenue, it's not funded yet,
Correct.
but it's listed as being spent this year. And is that our intention?
Yes.
Okay, so what you said of the total of BPW cash for the funding, or
Mhm.
whatever words make that clear, that yes, all of these projects that are listed at 20, 25, 26 are being committed to be in this fiscal year, and the majority is funded
Mhm.
and a minority is by cash or other funding BPW sources.
I'm gonna get with you when I name it.
Okay.
Because it's
Or,
a clar-
or future funding.
it's a clarity issue.
Yeah.
It really is.
I think
Can I,
probably.
can I jump in here? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Ian.
Mike, go ahead. I'll follow you. Go ahead.
The structure that we laid out the last meeting was specifically designed so these conversations are much clearer. But in that particular case, you might remember the third leg of a cash flow statement is all about sources of funding that you need above and beyond your income sources that are internally generated. In other words, where do you have to go external to get sources to fund this? So the lingo in there would not be total less funding. It's really all funding sources, whether it's internal funding sources or external funding sources, less expenses. If that number is negative, that means you have not identified a source of revenue or income anywhere to fund those. So that would be a hole. So there's a language and a presentation issue here that makes it a little bit confusing. I think when all of us are seeing no less funding, we're saying, well, geez, we have 2.6 million. We got to scramble around to find, but that's not necessarily what that means.
So I was thinking, just Mike, just on that is put a key at the bottom. Everything else is clear. And then the bottom just says funding source and just green highlighted projects funded, white highlighted projects. Pending or BPW
Yeah.
discussion, so that you would know it's just a key to it, but it also, I mean, obviously you're gonna change, you and Richard are gonna
Yeah.
decide for the title, but I think that little box key, I'm seeing that when Ellen Lorraine presents to our council, it really helps them. So it's like a little summary box
I know what you
at the end. And is all of the green external funded, or are those also commingled with BPW funds?
This is all outside funds that we're
Okay,
getting.
so calling the green external funding
Yeah.
source, that would help, and then do external and internal.
Yeah.
That would be clear.
That's pretty clear.
And Kim, if you wanted to just be slightly more crisp even on that, you could have internal funding, and external funding could be a combination of grants and loans.
Yeah,
I
correct.
think in this case, you're all grants at this point, right?
It's grants and loans.
It's a grants
And
and
Oh,
I
yeah,
actually, I put it on there for line 71 through 84, whether it's a loan or a grant.
Okay. Obviously, the beauty of a grant is you don't have to pay it back. The negative of a loan is you do. So sometimes breaking those out is a level of transparency that's probably important.
Well, I see what you have.
Mhm.
The section. Mhm.
And I can even break that down further of loans together, grants together, 100% grants, matching grants.
I think so. I mean, I know principal forgiveness because I've been in the world of the Clean Water Act, but does everybody know that in terms of the board or new board members? Because it's, I mean, it's a term, it's a term of art that is used all the time.
Yeah.
But just as you think through it. Because it's forgiveness. I mean, that's how the agency, they never say anything but forgiveness.
Yes, there is,
They don't even like to say grant.
yeah, I put up that on there for 74 for Hornkill, the principal forgiveness
Mhm.
portion.
Okay, so I think that's just the clarity we're all saying is, so it doesn't look, the bottom line is, you're not in a deficit. You
Yeah.
have different funding sources, but you guys are,
Need
the
to
board
make-
has to make
yeah.
decisions about. Do they want to have those priorities, whatever,
Yeah.
yeah. And then where do you note? So I'm trying to get the city to do this, where it is a joint city project.
And just in the description of like line
Oh, I
one.
just
Well,
because
just
it
like
says city
Fourth
project.
Street,
project,
Savannah, city.
Okay, because it says city project.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
I could read and see that. I was just keeping my own list going. City joint.
This is great.
This is terrific, okay. And then my only question, and Mike, this also goes to out year. How do you inform a board that there's more to come? You know, in other words, for projects that are a 20-year grant, or a loan program, and there is going to have to be repayment upon completion or whatever. How does the board through these sheets understand there's a lot more money that you're really committing to?
By looking at the additional years and, or is there more money allocated to the total?
They really,
By just focusing on, there's like 1.8 million, like, let's just take line 3 with 4th Street.
Right.
That's just telling them, but see, that's just telling them,
There's another.
but they
Fourth
don't
Street.
know
but see, they don't know
that the payments aren't gonna start until
exactly,
the end of that,
right,
which is why we want the new framework
yes,
that you can actually see the cash flows coming in.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
You'll see the expenses incurred and then the revenues coming in as a reimbursement from the state.
Right,
Good.
And then you'll see the debt payments after the project is done.
yes,
Perfect.
But like I said,
Yes.
that's all part of the new framework
Yes.
stuff.
it is part of it, it's one of the real strengths of the new framework, it's like the real story.
Yes.
Right.
Kim, just so I'm clear, and I apologize if you said it already, we do have visibility on a $2.6 million internal, or that's going to require internal funding at this point. Okay.
Yes.
Next year, we might not have visibility on the 12 million that's going to require internal funding, but that
Yeah.
will be different. Yeah.
Which is a conversation, because 7 million of it is a granular activated carbon. Building, I guess, really, it's
They're
for
building
PFAS,
tanks for PFAS.
And who knows?
and who knows?
Quite
Then, yeah,
late.
because it
Yeah.
could be that, it could be new wells, it could be, that's part of the
Or no new
down under the
regulation.
water.
Or
protection,
Or
regulation
the
might
regulation
go
might
away.
change, the regulation might go away.
Or be,
It'll-
lessened.
Or exactly, but the problem still exists.
Yeah,
Yes.
at this
Yes.
point, I don't know if you would say it's a coin flip. Okay, the next is the 4th Street project. We all know that one with, including Burton, Park and Johnson.
And that's starting at the end of this year,
These are engineering.
physically.
Yeah, I don't know the exact starting.
The construction, I think, was fall of 26.
So that's what I thought, then it put it in this. But
Fall
that's
of
correct,
26.
yeah, I think that is that what it is.
So it's not this year, it is next year.
But it's still
Yes.
costs that we're incurring for that project.
Right,
Right, okay.
And as just an outlier is the side streets off of 4th Street, which we've got pushed back until fiscal year 29, just there as a 5-year.
So you're just gonna come down Fourth, stop there, but you're not gonna go out to the side streets.
Only we're
Until
going
29.
from Savannah all the way to Burton
I gotcha.
on 4th, and then we're
Right.
going to go Park Avenue towards Johnson
Okay,
and up to Johnson to DuPont. That's where it stops this project right now.
okay.
Then after we get that, the thought was we check the pipes, all of them are all old, and then we will eventually start doing the.
Yeah, I
side
think I
streets.
remember Charlie saying, right, okay, yes,
Yeah,
and
as-
Fourth to Johnson, Fourth to Burton, not Burton, not going.
Yeah, it goes all the way to Burton.
Okay, and then over to Johnson?
It's not gonna do Burton though, but it's gonna do all the way
Okay,
Alright.
Fourth Street to Burton and tie in
Yes.
right there. And then it's gonna take a
a left.
left on Park and then up on
Johnson.
Johnson.
Oh, I see, I see.
To
Park.
Dupont.
I see, I
Yeah.
see.
And then
Yeah.
while Fourth Street is open, we're gonna see all the connections.
Right, yes,
So
I got you.
Right,
Yeah.
so that tells us
The
a
placement.
picture of
Yep.
what is
Yeah, right, I
going
remember
left
that
and right off
conversation.
of Fourth.
That's right.
Okay,
This is a separate topic, but about that, I think because that has so much civic
amen.
interest, that
Mhm.
probably a easy to read map. Because folks might be coming to your BPW board meeting on finance, just highlighting that phase one is this, phase two is this, or however you want to call it. There's so much interest on.
But that's extremely important, given that you're really not gonna get into it until 2029.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You
it's
better say
only,
something right now,
That's
because
right.
they are ready.
They are ready and they're very active to come
Exactly.
to
and
meetings.
it's only about 50 houses.
Yeah, but they're a
Yes.
vocal 50 houses.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're treating 50 houses, there's a lot more. that
Yeah,
Oh, I see what
we
you're
are
saying, yeah,
treating.
right, right,
Right.
okay.
I think it was like 54.
54,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarity, I appreciate that.
Next one down is the Hornkill project. Same thing. It's a city project. People look like they're gonna be annexing the
Looks
city.
like it. I mean,
There is.
What is the
principal forgiveness.
status of that?
Hey, I'm just
Hornbill
writing-
annexation? Because
I just.
we
remembered
sort of
myself.
left it with,
It
you
looked-
didn't have everybody.
There's one property waiting, and I was just writing myself, what is the status?
Is
I
it
don't know
just
the
one?
answer. I believe it is only one.
Okay,
But
let's
all of
move,
them had
But I-
to sign a tent.
They all
That's
signed
right.
consent.
Or they wouldn't get,
That's
they get
right.
forgiveness.
Yes.
but see, when I was the one, there was still 4 or so people who weren't.
Correct.
So what you're saying is it's come a long way, and there's only just one now?
Yeah, the
That-
state is offering
that's
principal
huge.
forgiveness.
Yeah.
If you.
All,
annex it
all
to
the
city.
state required is that they sign a letter of intent. They want
Right.
to annex.
Right.
They said he had to annex.
Right,
They just had to sign a letter of intent.
okay,
For it to be
okay.
I
that's
think
good
we're
to
given
know.
that they could keep their wells, not put in new wells for, the gardening and other
Right,
things.
right.
That helped
Okay.
some of the folks to make that
All right.
decision. But I'm also gonna check.
Richard, can I ask a question?
Yes,
This is more of a, as we're kind of learning to work together as a committee. Should we be going through these individual projects? This committee doesn't have any oversight on whether a project gets done or not. It's not an engineering committee. It's just making sure we have the finances available to actually fund the projects that have presumably been approved. And it's really a question. We could go through each one of these projects, but it feels to be more informational and not a finance specific thing.
Well, let me suggest that there's no other committee. Really, I mean, they come up from,
Yeah, the board's the one that's gonna, yeah.
but what is?
Another related question. If we believe, and Kim is suggesting here, that all these are funded either through grants, loans, or we have enough internal funds, would this committee have any other power over these particular projects?
Mike, you're raising a really good point, and Bob's comment is also good. So sometimes, I know this, like on finance for the city, we start to look at parking and I'm like, whoa, we're not the parking people. The parking, and then the answer was, we don't have any parking people. So, okay, so it's just exactly what we're talking about. Maybe one of the things unless the board really wants to play in that role detailed, maybe we would say to the board, you might need let's call it a CIP meeting. Where you technically, with GMB, a smaller group goes through with Robin, looking at priorities, what are the technical challenges? I mean, that might be, or de facto, we're becoming that, and that's, maybe we don't have the right people for that.
But what he's saying is we don't have an action as a group.
We don't have an
That's
action.
what he's basically saying, so what relevance is it?
No, but I'm saying, I think, I agree. But I'm thinking maybe we should be recommending a small committee to help the board, unless the board likes to go
Okay.
project by project.
For the moment, I think Mike is correct. At the moment, let's go through and see, is everything funded or not funded, kind of the financial picture? And then we could say, well, okay, it would be helpful if there was more clarity or description of each one of the projects, and maybe that's a separate meeting that we want to go over. But if we keep going line by line, we're gonna be here a
All day.
long time
All
and
day.
missing
Yeah.
kind of the whole picture first.
Yeah.
To see, maybe there's something else that warrants
What's our
time.
basic point for doing this?
So our point as a finance committee is, do we have the funding, external, or
Yes.
internal, to meet
Yep.
the goal of the projects on our CIP?
Okay, and that's basically what she has done for us.
Correct, correct.
So I go back to, so what are we doing?
That, now that you've said, and so I guess the only question, if we have finance blinders on appropriately. Okay, green is fine, like green is good.
There you go.
Green to go, good color, and, and then the balance on it lets everybody know the obligations, not the cash flow as we discussed, but it talks about what's committed. And then on the white ones, we're saying, okay, you have funding internally that you are allocating to the CIP. So you don't have a delta. So when the board hears in the finance committee is, you have a funded CIP. We would just say, is there anything else you're not funding? That's what a finance committee would say, not because we're technically interested.
No, keep going, you
But
good.
what we want to know, do you have any outliers that you believe technically are
That we
priorities
missed.
That we missed? That's what we're after. Is there anything else behind the curtain?
That's right, because just to go through this, it's already been clarified.
Right,
We need to
Yeah,
know.
it feels like we should be in a position to go to the board, or when the staff goes to the board, the finance committee says what was put in front of us was financially sound and funded. That was really,
Exactly.
we went through everything. But the Children's Beach House, it's just as an example, has a finance committee, but it actually has a property committee. And the property committee will say, we need to buy these vehicles, we need to, put these windows in, we need to do the roof, but that's not stuff that the finance committee has any expertise in. We're trying to say as a finance committee at the Children's Beach House, well, we have funding for those projects.
That's right.
But to Bob and Amy's point, I think this organization potentially could use, whether it's called an engineering committee or whatever, that goes through and says, these are the projects that this system needs to function over time. Then the finance committee's role is to say, okay, given that, we're going to make sure that we have the appropriate funding sources and the appropriate capacity to fund these projects. But I don't know that anybody on this committee, I can certainly say for myself, has any engineering knowledge about whether, the 4th Street project should go in or not. That's just not in my comfort zone. So I can listen to Robin go through that, and I'm interested as a citizen, but it really doesn't, I can't weigh in any material way on that. But I can weigh in if we don't have appropriate funding for this stuff.
Well, yeah, that's true, because this is finance, and that's all we're supposed to be looking at. Is the money there or isn't the money there?
So what are the other questions a finance committee would want to know?
True.
I would want to know, design versus construction, which you were saying and articulating it, and it can just be coded. And the reason I want to know that is not because I care as an engineer about design and construction. I want to know about that as a finance committee, because should a project be stopped for whatever reason, because projects run into problems, that you can pivot to another project. So you basically have shovel-ready design, ready to go, or you get a windfall, we get ARPA money, or who knows what happens. So you would be saying to the board, this is the plan, but if something happens, the finance committee has seen based on the design and construct phases, what we can do. And that's really more of your internal management, but that's a good thing to know. The other thing
That's
is,
future planning.
it's future planning, yes. So we're ready to go, and we also know that in our universe, things happen, new regulations. We run into a graveyard, like whatever, all the things that can happen in construction. We're not then just in hold financially.
Right.
The other thing I'd want to know is, do you have any other, let's have it a different color. So green is external, white is internal. Are you proposing to the board any other pot of money that is a CIP related money that you would, like reserves, call it just CIP reserves? I'd
Yeah,
want to
it
know as
could
the board
be.
is how much is left, like, are we at the bottom of the
Can you
well
check?
here? Or do we have a little bit of wiggle room?
And is there anything else
Yeah.
pending out there that we don't have on here?
Right, right.
Yeah, where the funds are coming from, which
Mm.
if it's coming from operating or if it's coming from reserve, okay.
Because they're making a decision on yes, but do they know this is like absolutely yes, and we're in good shape, or we are now scraping the bottom of the barrel of our funding?
It's just.
Yeah,
Or as
progress.
Carolyn said, is there another thing out there that technically you want to do, but you aren't yet? It's like deferred projects. Are there any deferred projects? I don't
And
know.
it's
the
kind of
answer.
more of the role of this finance group as opposed to what, we were saying, we need to just look at this and just say, okay, we know that these things are funded. And exactly what Andy said, exactly, that's as far as we should go as our group.
So on these notes for the O and M, at the bottom, I have the R&E income, and then I bring in the capital expenses that are not funded by external funding.
Sorry. Oh, this one?
All of them.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep, they're broken down by.
Right, I got you, thank you.
And then I have an incomplete line of developer CIP payments.
Yes.
And then I have excess funds to go to investments, and that will be electric and water excess funds, and then it'll be a shortage of funds for wastewater and stormwater. So
You are.
I am starting to do it,
Yeah.
but not all
Not on
on
the
here.
spreadsheet, yeah. I get it.
Yeah, you're doing exactly what she said. So,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, just to build on Amy's comments too, when we're more focused now on sort of seeing the big long-term picture of this organization financially, we have a technical need to approve a one-year budget because that is the process.
Mhm.
But if this was a business and I was the business leader, the first thing I'd be looking at is 2027 and 2028, where we may be relatively funded this year, but we got some really large commitments next year. And right now, we're going to have to come up with $12 million as Kim sees it in internal funding. So to build on Amy's comment, where is that coming from? The train in the tunnel might not be this year, but
But it's
the
there.
next 2 years are to me look worrisome. And that's where the finance committee starts to really play a big role. Remember that finance is all about the future, and we're trying to look for future problems as quickly as early as we possibly can. But if this committee's focused right now on just getting the one-year budget through, I think Kim has said, we look like we're in pretty good shape this year for funding these projects.
And so maybe when you present to the board, you actually say just what Mike said, and then the finance committee at a future meeting looks at future finance issues. And you do make a presentation to the board in 6 months or whatever and say, I want you all to be aware of the future that we're looking at, and here's our problem, or, here's our revenue expense ratio.
Given that you have to have them do an approval of your budget before April 1st.
Yeah, it has to be presented to them a month before
Mhm.
approval.
Right. And I think what's
And you-
hard with boards, and including the city, in that we want to show them the multi-year, we want to show them what things are headed. But then when they look at the out years and they get worried, that's not the function of the budget approval, it's just the year they're in. So you're teasing them, that's not the right word, but you're teasing them on, we got some problems coming, but we're okay now, prove this.
So they can function.
So they can function, that's right.
And we're working on it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're aware of it. It's
Right.
not like
No,
Right.
exactly.
pay no attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just what?
We're over today.
Yeah, right.
By the way, just to build too, if Kim is presenting this right now with Robin in the room, and I'm just talking out loud with you guys. And let's say Kim said, there's 2 million, we're missing $2 million in funding. When we look at all our internal and external sources, we're still $2 million short. Then I think the conversation with Robin might be, which one of these projects could we delay? Then you start to have those kinds of conversations.
That's right.
Exactly.
But that's not what Kim's presenting to us right now. She's
No.
saying, look, we're good for this coming fiscal year.
It's a balanced
Exactly.
budget,
Exactly.
right, with
Yeah.
existing sources,
Right.
yeah.
And that's what you have to present to the board. Right. So from that perspective.
So that may be, the finance committee is just reminding you what your opening statement was.
Yeah.
I'm listening, that's what I'm hearing, is
Yeah.
set the table for them.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Exactly.
So then do we want to move on to the O and M budget?
yes.
So, as you can see, I have a yellow highlight for other revenue. And then in the notes, I also have another yellow highlight at the bottom. This is for the developers. I
Okay,
don't have an exact number of how much DMB work is going to be done with the new projects coming in. And that is going to affect our CIP for paying them out, and it will affect our revenue from getting it from our developer, which is actually going to more than offset in revenue because we have a 15% admin fee.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So DMB is working on that, and it's expected this week, but I just don't have the number yet
Okay,
for this meeting.
But you will have it for the meeting,
For the board meeting,
board meeting,
yes.
yeah, okay.
But I'm hoping that it comes within the next 2 days and I can make the changes and send it back out to the finance committee for them to see the numbers.
As I wrote you in a note, though, I'd like to see the actuals going back a couple of years. Because you're a little bit like, this is the 25 actuals and remaining forecast. Someone less proper can shade that forecast. So I'd like to see actuals the last couple of years.
So you want to see the actuals.
I don't know if everybody else is interested, but I am.
And that's existing, documented,
Yeah.
things, not something you have to make up.
no, they should be there.
Yeah, just to put another plug in for the new structure, I agree with Bob. And the new structure has 2 years of history, as well as the current year budget to try to put things in some kind of historical perspective. Hey, Kim, one thing I would have on it, I might be looking at this wrong, but the change in net assets, column, your column N or Excel column R, line 43 is 6,400,000 in change in net assets, meaning that's before we fund the shortfall in the capital.
Yes,
So effectively, I think what you're saying is we're going to need of that 6,400,000, we're going to have to take 2.6 million of that to use as internal funding for our capital projects. So there'll be 4 million left over
yes,
to build reserve balances, as an example, or help at least start to nip away at the following year's shortfall.
Yeah, as a whole, yes, but electric and water are healthy with wastewater and stormwater going to be drawing from their funds.
Yep.
Mm.
Okay. So for electric, for the revenue, and I have these notes here, I did not do a commodity increase as we did a 10% increase last year with the crazy increase that we got from the wholesale rate. We do have a 3.7% decrease, which I was going to run that through the PCA, which is going to result in about 1/10 of a penny less that you're going to be paying kilowatt hour.
Jesus.
We're not minting pennies.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Now what?
But I think there's some benefit to doing that,
Sure, I know there is.
which is we raised it up. We gave it back to you when we got some
Benefits from.
benefit.
Yeah.
So we're being
Generous,
open and
we're
honest
giving it
about
back.
Yeah, it's very transparent. It's the right thing.
There you go,
Message.
sure, or
And
1/10 of it.
You know, I mean, it's a whole lot better than trying to defend it.
And with Indian River, which is, we could have a whole conversation with Indian River. But there was an interconnection that was completed from mainland Maryland to Peninsula. So the Indian River coal plant no longer has to be on Resiliency Must Run program. So we don't know the effects of that yet.
Mm.
DMEC did receive a large sum of money. But we don't know if we still need to continue making payments.
Okay.
Or if that's an offset of the payments. So that is still up in the air, and once that actually gets figured out and we make a vote at DMEC. If that money's coming back home, then that might change the rates again.
Yeah.
So that's why I said just.
Is that
like
likely to
cloudy
be
or
known
just-
at budget time?
Say again?
Is that likely to be known at budget time?
No. It'll probably be,
This year,
it'll be this year. It'll either be the next DMEC meeting, which is in March, or the meeting after that in April.
So not for this budget.
Mhm.
So there might be a mid-season adjustment, like there was last year when we got that big 10% increase in May.
But hopefully this would be a decrease.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, this will be,
Okay.
That's the beauty part. of it.
yeah.
Yes.
2/10 of a
Yeah.
penny.
There you go. I'm going shopping right now.
Yep.
Avoid the rush.
And then I listed our new customers coming through for White's Pond, Fisher's Cove, Dutchman's Harvest, Gibbs Commercial, and the Beach House of Lewes.
Mhm.
For our expenses, I used the CPIU inflation, expected inflation rate of, they said 2.5 to 2.7. I used the high end. With-
What's the timing of those? Of that, the impact? Is it this year?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
All of them?
There's actually more customers in each of those developments, but that's what we expect to actually come online this year. For our. Do you want me to go line by line, or?
Mhm.
Are you okay that there's no, I just wanna hit, I was just gonna hit the point.
Just hit the
Yeah,
highlights.
exactly. Highlight what you think.
For salaries and wages, we're gonna go back to 4 employees. We had 1 person retire and we had to bring someone in for training. For our cost of service, it's gonna be reduced by, or sorry, our professional and contractual is gonna be reduced by our cost of service study that was done last year or this year. And then I added additional engineering time for grants because we're having the meetings and.
Yeah.
Yep. For admin, this is gonna be across all 4 utilities. It's gonna be increased by our new employee being here for a year. The rent increase is 3%, merit-based increase. The RKL suggested increases on the study for compensation to match market, and then we're gonna reduce by Sharon's tuition, because she got her degree.
Good bit.
And and there was one thing that I forgot, which was the upstairs renovation, which is gonna reduce that line by $13,216.
Sharon, what's your degree?
Business leadership.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're gonna need it,
Yeah.
especially the leadership part. Just saying.
And then for non-operating, I did an increase for our interest as we have more money in the accounts. And the money that we did move to the money market only had a half a year of interest on it.
Say that again to me slowly. Say that again.
We have more cash
Okay.
in our operating,
Mhm,
and then we did move 600,000
mhm.
this year, but it's only in the money market for half the year.
And you got a 2.5% on it.
We got 5%,
You got 5%.
so the other half would be 2.5.
Okay.
Where did you get the 5? What bank? Is that bank or are you on?
UBS.
Oh,
You
through
usually
UBS.
can get higher than you can if you're doing it personally.
Yeah,
5%,
yeah.
so
But
that-
that
Amy,
makes
there's
sense.
also an issue, if you go to a bank money market, which a lot of people do, they tend to have a much lower rate on those money markets
right.
because they're trying to rebuild their own.
Yeah.
If you go to something like a Vanguard, you can get one of their prime money markets and get just about the exact full rate of,
Absolutely
4.75
right.
now.
Mhm.
Can I put that that as just while you're raising it, sorry, as a future agenda item, which I think it is in here, that the finance committee should be looking at
Yes.
Vanguard, UPS,
Oh, yeah,
banks,
of
like
course.
we should really look at the investment portfolio later.
Yeah, we have this in note in there, something.
I agree.
That's.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
thing that needs its own attention.
Right, thanks, Mike, that prompted me to think
And
about
we
that.
want to
Mhm.
use the architectural framework,
Yes,
financial framework,
right,
Mhm.
as the way of looking at and analyzing, so we know the questions to ask for the pots we want to have.
Yeah.
Segregated.
makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense. I'm glad that you added in the time for grants, because obviously in a world that grants will come back in some form, we're busy doing it, but you might also want to say to the board, no grant projected revenue is in unless you have secured the grant. Okay, just in this environment, I think boards are all going to be concerned that we don't know what the universe is going to look like.
And then for the impact fees, it's the 140 expected residents to hook up onto our system.
Mhm.
And with the change of the upstairs renovation, reducing that expense, the bottom line is 1898927. And we have budgeted capital expenses not covered by funding, external funding, is increased to 1.1 million, and we made some last minute adjustments, which I did it on the actual thing, but I forgot to change it on my notes.
Mhm.
And then we still need the developer CIP payments,
Mhm.
and we should have excess money going into.
Okay, it was
Um,
1,890 versus 185. That's what you said.
1.899.
Yeah. Okay.
For water. I actually have the rates up here. Oh, did I? Oh. I had the rates up there because they're very complicated for in-city, out-of-city, the blocks of usage. Because it's just a lot to look at for me to.
Let's
just
get
really
Mike
remember.
back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we're not.
No, yeah.
Everything's fine, guys.
Okay.
But you might want to share our
I
screen. so
want to
Mike
see
can see.
Mike.
One thing.
Mike, do you want me to share the screen with you for the rates? For what is already scheduled?
You just go down Zoom.
He doesn't want to talk about it.
And then hit share.
Make sure we can hear him again.
Sorry, you don't, I have the Sharon's email here. with
I don't think I
everything.
have that. That
Oh, you don't
was
have that on there?
We don't have
Okay.
that sheet.
Share.
That's okay.
And this. Double click.
Nope, the share button at the bottom.
Charlotte.
There you go.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And you can move that green box left or right.
Okay.
Kim, this looks familiar.
Yeah, you may have looked at it before. So this is our current rates, and as you can see, in city, out of city, based on your pipe size, as you're ready to serve. Your irrigation, based on your pipe size, as you're ready to serve. And then your commodity rates is a block. So this is current year, and then this is this coming year. So this was already set in 2022 when we did a study with our rate consultants.
So how much is that in general?
It was,
I mean, 2%, 5%?
I want to say it was 6.3 for water overall.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Kim, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember Austin saying last year that the Board of Public Works' water rates are significantly below kind of market or Tidewater. Do you
Yes,
recall that?
Oh, really?
our commodity rate for our gallons used is very low.
Well, I thought he was even saying what the customers are being charged is very low compared
Yeah.
to what it would be if a Tidewater came in or something like that.
Well, that's interesting to know.
With the last few years of increases, we have started to get closer, but then Tidewater actually just did a big increase last year. I believe it was last year. So. Yeah,
But just to protect the board from the city, we should know that.
We should know that number. and
Yes,
we
but
should-
it's
That
coming.
should be a shared item of the
Uh-huh.
presentation.
Yeah,
And where you are in market, yes.
absolutely.
market comparison.
Mhm. They do need to know the percent increase, I think.
Yeah, I have
3%,
it somewhere, but I don't know
still-
why.
We're
Yeah,
still,
but still below the,
X amount below
that is
nearby competition.
really important.
All right, I have that note to add. For the new customers for water is gonna be White's Pond, Fisher's Cove, Dutchman's Harvest, Roosevelt Landing, Tower Hill, Mitchell's Corner, Capes Cove. Gate, and then Gibbs Commercial and the Beach House of Lewes, both of those are commercial.
Mhm.
There was a new meter put in for DRBA. It's a 6-inch meter for the entrance. That is actually, there's two, but it's actually feeding 2 other meters that we're reading in addition. So we owe them money back.
Hmm.
So that is going to be adjustment to our water for this year and next year that I originally put in these numbers.
gotcha.
So for the budget year of fiscal year 2026, it'll decrease the revenue $31,159 for water in commercial line. For expenses, the salaries and wages, may need to be changed depending on the building permit increases from the city. So we're gonna watch that for our plumbing permits. That it's a revenue and then the expense to the plumber for doing the inspection.
Cause that,
250 houses, 500 voters.
Yeah, gotcha.
that's proposed at 3% right?
It is, it is. That will be probably up in a week.
Okay.
Looks like that's probably something that's gonna happen. I mean, I know your crystal ball, but
Our finance committee is recommending it.
okay, that's what I thought, yeah. Yeah, okay. The crystal ball still looks cloudy.
For the professional contractual, it's the cost of service study being reduced. The LCR postcards, we had to send out a few with the surveys, which was actually pretty expensive. The wellhead protection study is completed and the dive team that had to go under looking at the pipe when it burst.
Yeah,
And we are increasing it by LCR letters that have to go out. It's not a survey or anything. It should be a lot less than the postcards that went out.
Do you have any contingency in there? I mean, it's not hoping we need a dive team, but anything else unexpected that might happen?
I did also increase it by inflation.
Hmm.
After I took out that number, those numbers. But. There's no,
As far as you know, there's no fat.
correct.
did you say fat?
Yeah.
No fat to trim up, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
Is there a patch?
That's a word we don't need, fat.
Kim, is insurance covering any of that?
Say again?
Is insurance covering any of that cost?
Insurance for what cost?
Oh, you were just talking about the pipe under the,
Under the water.
No,
Under the river.
no. That might be an interesting question of
But yeah,
if they would.
Well, yeah, at least look into it.
yeah.
I mean, it feels to me like that's why you buy insurance, for these big unexpected things.
Yeah, and
The other thing, Mike, and it might be too late to go back, but when you have a water line break, the Office of Drinking Water in every state has reserved funds to help you out in those situations, and those are typically direct emergency grants. So I think Mike's point's a good one. Go back and check with insurance. You know, we have now we have all those costs now aggregated for you. What are you covering? And then I would still make a call into the Office of Drinking Water, say, as you know, we had on August 20th, this break of service of safe drinking water. And again, we have all of our funding. How can you help us?
So we did have this
no matter
on,
how late it is, you can
That's
always go
right.
back and do
yeah,
that.
right. We did have it on the CIP schedule for, I want to say it was 2 years. But with it happening, we asked for emergency
Yep,
funding, and they did do that for
Oh,
the
the upstream
loan.
water did.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Good.
For the admin, again, the upstairs renovation is going to reduce it by $7,635.68.
Can I stop for a second?
mhm.
Sorry, before we leave that topic. Finance, one of the most important things about finance is risk mitigation. We can have a different conversation about that at some point. Insurance plays into that, lines of credit play into that, for example. But if it feels to me like insurance is an important component of financial risk management. And we probably should understand that insurance policy that we have very well, because it may serve all the goals that we need, but it feels to me like things like, unexpected break in a major water line under a canal would sort of fall into that reason why you have insurance, sort of like a car accident. And it may be that we go through the policy and they say, no, we don't cover this. Then the question would be, well, what do you cover? And should we have a policy that does cover this type of thing? I don't have any answers to this, but it feels like an insurance policy that we're paying on regularly is a very important piece of financial risk management. And we need to make sure that that policy is where we need it.
You had an insurance person on your.
Yeah,
On your,
we did.
who is, do you,
We did,
don't now.
right. It was Tom Owens.
Under non-operating is the same kind of thing for the interest income. The interest expense is increased to show one payment for the canal crossing that should be done in the spring.
Mhm.
Impact fees, are the 277 expected residential and the 2 commercials. And for the grants, it's the emerging contaminants and the planning grants for 4th Street and Hornkill. So the new bottom number is 3,107,682. We have 465,000 not funded from our capital expense. We have 146,000 in debt payments. And then I still need the developer CIP, and we should have excess funds going to the water.
Okay.
So following up on Mike's comment for your presentation to the board, but again, it's for us as finance, maybe adding on by each line or business line, risk assessment. So on that one, you have the one you talked about before, where we may get a kick, we may get some funds returned, but those are not budgeted, and that would be in the next fiscal year anyway. But it lets them know there's some uncertainty, like risk/uncertainties. That's a good one. I mean, that potentially is good, but I think it's good for the board to not have to do the analysis of the finance committee. We should be able to say to them, these are the risks we want to share with you, board, that you need to factor in. And so I would do it as a category. And you know them. I mean, it's like you're communicating those to us. So I just think it's good to let them know that. And risk doesn't always have to be a negative.
Right.
Okay. We always think about it as a negative, but the fact is, it's risk, and then also it's risk management. So getting to know more about what our insurance folks can do, as Mike was saying, for catastrophic activity.
It's a safety.
For our wastewater. Again, this is for our rates for sewer. These are our current rates, ready to serve inside, outside cities, based on pipe size for your water. And then your commodity rate based on inside, outside city, and your class for residential, commercial, industrial. And then this will be this budgeted year.
How much is that rate increase? Is that the 2.7 or is that something?
This should be higher. It's. When they did it, it was 7.9, but with our growth, it's gonna be like 10%.
But the homeowner is gonna pay 7.9.
I will confirm that number.
Well, I mean, approximately,
Yeah.
I believe you.
I did
in the
actually
first
have,
for
I had those
video,
numbers
so-
on notes somewhere, but I don't have it with me,
Yeah,
obviously.
okay, but it's an obvious question somebody's gonna ask you.
Mhm. And I also have notes of the cash on hand and everything, but I don't have it with me. For wastewater. We have the new customers, it's pretty close to water. There's a couple that are only water that are not on this one. And this will be impacted by DRBA as well with the new meters that they brought in. We were overcharging for the old meters. That impact will be $56,373 for fiscal year 26. It'll reduce commercial. For the expenses, again, the building permit increase for the city will affect this. For the plumber payment. For repairs and maintenance, we use Clean Delaware to haul sludge. They are increasing their rates by 5.6%. So that is included, and then inflationary on the rest of the items. The professional and contractual, the cost of service is coming out, but we increased it by the wastewater treatment plant contract increase, which is $31,000 for this year, but it does not start until October, so it's 5 months of that.
Have you told the plumbing inspector?
No,
Should do that.
and for the admin, the upstairs renovation, it's gonna be reduced by $7,048.32. For non-operating, there is one payment for headwork showing. So that includes our interest expense. And then we have 247 expected residential and 2 commercial hookups for our impact fees. With our amended bottom line being $1,183,751. Our unfunded capital expenses are $645,000, and then our big outflow is our principal payments. It's, yep, it's close to $1 million. That's our wastewater treatment plant. 850 of that is wastewater treatment plant. And then we need the CIP, and then we're gonna have a shortage.
And the wastewater treatment plant goes out for another 3 years or so.
February 2027 is the last one.
It's been in there for a while.
And then with this, I'm gonna, on all of these, I'm gonna add what the actual cash balances are and operating
Yeah.
reserves and everything. For them to see how much is actually gonna eat up.
Right.
For stormwater. Again, DRBA is going to be affecting, but it's actually gonna work out to be a $0 difference because it's gonna come out of commercial, but then go in industrial since how much water they're pumping on the 6-inch. So it's gonna be a 504 reduction to commercial, but a 504 addition to industrial. The new customers expected for White's Pond, Fisher's Cove, Roosevelt Landing, and then the 2 commercial properties. The professional and contractual will be reduced by the cost of service study. And actually, I'm gonna go up the line for the salaries. For all of our water employees, when they do their time card, they are supposed to be tracking what they spend on stormwater and what they spend on wastewater. And then that goes into our salaries and benefits to be reduced from water into those 2 categories, wastewater and stormwater. So that's why you see money in there. The admin is the upstairs renovation. It's gonna be reduced by $1,468.40. And going to the bottom line, adjusted would be $160,265. With our unfunded capital expenditures is $275, so we're already gonna be pulling some funds from there. And then we have our CIP payments that we need to work through, and then the shortage of funds will be on there, and
Okay.
I'm gonna.
And how much is your rate increase?
20%. That one was easy because it's just flat.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that's enough.
The
It's 3
blessing.
times, yeah.
Yeah.
I just need to do
I'm
it 3
giving you
times.
the blessing.
I'll be done now.
Okay, we're good here.
My morning 3 sneezes.
And then at the bottom of the O&M, we always included what our debt is and our payments, what our loan balances are, and it shows our overall debt service coverage ratio.
Is the debt service
It's great.
ratio, is it higher than it's ever been?
I don't know if it's higher than it's ever been, but it's been hovering between right around 7, like 6.5 and 7. Yeah. And I would caution to say that's all 4 utilities put together.
Yeah.
That the numbers might change.
Yeah,
if you
right.
look at
That's
this particular one.
right.
Yeah.
This one, we're glad we're not enterprise.
Yeah.
And where across all lines, and I've just forgotten this in the framework, where do we have contingencies? I don't mean reserves that we're building, but I mean pipes breaking or down service, or where is that captured? That we build into the budget some room for
Security.
reality.
So I will say this year we had, a few bursts and some repayments of roads. I kept that in there
Okay,
for this coming year.
okay,
Oh.
okay, so you're just basically maintaining that
Yeah.
life happens and that is built into the,
Yeah.
okay.
Important.
Amy, you might recall that the formulas to come up with the required capital reserves and operating reserves are partly based on contingencies and
Contingencies.
emergencies and things like that.
Okay.
Kim, and I apologize if you have it somewhere on here, Kim. I don't think any of our reserve pools are actually at their required level yet, which is something.
Capital, yeah, capital. I think 3 of the 4 of capital are met, but the operating is below.
Below, okay.
And how is that shown to the board before?
is-
I mean, I thank you, Mike, for the reminder on the framework, but how is
Where
that,
is it?
where is it shown to the board as part of the presentation?
The cash reserve model.
Yeah,
In the
that's
cash reserve.
important.
Okay,
Okay.
Good point.
So,
But to be clear, we're not as a finance committee able to go to the board and say we're within policy on the reserves, because we're not.
right, right.
Yes.
But as a finance committee, we're going to the board saying we're not. I mean, it's the flip side of that, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What we can say is we have visibility on funding this year to run the operations and to complete the capital projects that are in line. But we are short of our reserve goals.
Mhm.
And whether that entails a rate rise right now or something to make those up, it's a real issue. It is an issue.
And they need to be made aware of that.
They need to be aware.
Yeah.
Because they could do they have choices, right? I mean, they have choices to say, I'm not doing all the projects in white, okay, or push, I mean, we recognize that engineering need, but push them out a couple of years so we can get our operating reserve in better shape.
Amen.
Those are the kind of conversations they should have.
Maybe one question for Richard would be, to Amy's point, there are, if we're looking at the data correctly, the finance committee should, if we do have holes, should say, here's some options that we think are viable to correct that. You know, one viable option here might be this year, we think we should live with the reserves as they are. They're underfunded in a couple of cases. Or to Amy's point, we should put off a project or two to help rebuild those reserves. But those are good discussions for us to be having, so we can give the board some level of direction on what the finance committee believes is the right path.
So I have for my homework of on the capital
Mhm.
of renaming that bottom line.
Yep.
And suggestions or to show where that shortage is gonna come from.
Mhm.
And a nice key of what all the colors mean.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
For the O&M. I'm guessing this is gonna be 2 pages for adding additional actual years. It'll be electric and water and then wastewater, stormwater on the next page. And then, a cash reserve model to show where our shortages are. Risk and uncertainty for each utility, a market comparison. And cash balances.
I don't know that you,
Mhm.
I think you need to keep the market comparison ready, not terribly public. I mean,
Why is that?
What market
Explain that.
comparison?
Related
Are
to
you
the
talking
rates,
about?
related to the.
well, you're raising rates
Oh, you're talking about.
pretty
I
substantially
see.
across these boards. And
No, I know where you're coming from now, right?
people are either gonna see it in their bill or because we tell them or
I mean, I
whatever. I just
Make
think
it all
in terms
cheery.
of messaging, you gotta think about that.
Yes, because we have to have the same message here.
Yeah, and I mean, people from the city might want to know ahead of time or whatever, so they're appraised.
Well, let me just take it as a customer, in looking at my own thing, came in and asked for a meeting with a couple of folks to say, could you explain to me what this is? Now, I don't know if anybody goes to that length, because I'm a little bit crazy on that respect,
Yeah,
but
well, I'm
they
just,
are going to want to know.
it could be, this might make everybody's bill go up $10. But if it went up $30, there'd be a lot of discussion.
I think that's a very,
customer effect.
I think
Sure it
it's
is.
a really important, because I see that on the city night right now in the proposed property increase.
Yeah.
When you look at the percentage, there's a flip out mode, even at 5%. But when you look at the average property, that's $40 a year. Okay, that message is important.
Okay.
I think you should have that too, but I'm with Bob. You don't need to present all your market benchmarked items. You just need to know it when you're asked that.
Yep.
The other thing, Kim, I would say is this is a lot to digest, right? And you are doing an excellent job. So the average person, the public listening, or even the board, you're going through it all, but either upfront or at the end, and it's just your presentation style. Tell them the big picture and then tell them the details. That's my
The
style.
basic summary
The
sheet.
basic summary sheet. Or if you like to build your case and then you say, now that I've presented all, here's the impact of it. And I would also say, Richard, one of the things that you could help him on is to tell the board not to ask questions until she's done. Or do it by utility line, because you have a story you're telling and they need to hear the whole.
Yes,
So
and if they pick it
They
apart,
pick it apart,
you're gonna lose it.
you're gonna lose it, right? So it's your style. Do you want to present the overall, like, the budget that you're gonna see is balanced? We have these issues in reserves, whatever the things you want them to really hone in on. Now, let me tell you the
I
details.
agree with that. You definitely propose it up front. That let me finish what I have to say first, and then I will listen to your questions.
And I'd like to just add too to Bob and Amy's comments. I don't think the justification for raising rates is that we're below Tidewater The justification for raising rates is because we have to fund operations and capital expenditures to make sure that we have a safe and
Keep this-
you know,
yes.
running infrastructure. So I think I think Bob and Amy are right. That should be in your head, Kim, you know, those numbers if something came up at the board. But other than that, I think your justification for this has nothing to do with Tidewater's rates.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even mention Tidewater.
I think it was good for the finance committee to know that although these rates are going up, we're not this huge outlier.
Right.
And it should make us all feel better.
Well, I know off the top of my head, we're 12% less than Delmarva Power
Mhm.
rates.
Well, it's just sufficient to say we're below.
And
Neighboring or
competitive.
nearby,
Below
And
and
we're
competitive.
competitive.
you know, and we had
Competitive
to
is
do
the
this,
word.
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
but
that's a good way.
nobody likes a higher bill.
Nobody likes a higher bill and
Without justification.
without justification, and we've just experienced this crazy cold weather.
Mhm.
So all of our bills are going up no matter what. We're wearing every layer we can. And so from the public standpoint, they're gonna be like, what? My bill is even higher. So I think it's translating down to, on average, what does this mean? What does this rate increase mean? This is good work. It's really good work.
Excellent.
I wanted to have it done by Wednesday because Thursday was CMAC quarterly meeting, which your whole day's gone, but it didn't get done on Wednesday. It got done on Friday. So then that's when the weekend, well, that's what the numbers were like. Oh my God, did I forget that? Did I put that in there? Oh my God, I did forget it. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
So
No, I think it's
It's
great.
really good.
Well, it's apparent you put energy and
It's very
it speaks
confidence
for
building,
itself, yes.
you know, like, that you have thought through all the details.
Mhm. Yep. We do not
Well
take it
done.
lightly.
thanks.
So going forward, I mean, the project list is pretty much what the general manager and you have laid out. It really,
And the city and GMB.
yeah, it really hasn't been. In the short term, it's agreed. Going out, it's rather speculation, you know, and at some point, we'll need to convene a little bit of a committee to say, gee, if we have to disassemble the wastewater treatment plant, that's gonna be, who knows? But somebody to make up some numbers on that and then say, whoops, put that in the model. That really means a big problem out there in 2030 or not. And then another way to say, we're gonna take that out and put in some other thing, like build a new one. And so you got a base case and then you got some big stuff
Options.
that's moving around.
Yeah.
And Kim will have to keep track of all that, like project A is in and project B is out.
Mhm.
I think a big thing too, work, again, more and more has been working with the city to kind of coordinate these projects.
Right.
It kind of was, but it was never. I
Right.
mean, just because we had the same engineer, it was kind of like over here and we're over here and
Exactly.
it was like, where are you at? Oh, well, we were gonna do this first. No, we, you know,
Right.
so I think it's now more aligned that really helped. Because again, as you see this, a lot of these projects are combined projects.
Absolutely. So I think that's an important message that you put in your opening statement. That you know, we, just what you said, Rob, absolutely. We are now, it's not a shared CIP, but it is completely in alignment. We understand the left hand and the right hand know what each
Yeah.
want to do.
But
That
there-
didn't
there
just
is-
happen overnight, that's been working.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is, there is still
Yes, seriously.
the
Yep.
exterior aspect of Del Dot suddenly starting something
Yes.
Yeah.
where we could take advantage or the
Yeah.
city
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
of shifting things around.
that's right. that third leg of the
that's-
stool for us.
You know, that's happened before.
Yeah,
and
which that would be
Makes sense.
Kings Highway on here.
And Strand
That's-
Road
yeah,
too.
You just never,
You just never know.
And
We're trying to, at the city side, we're saying to them, could you just meet with us twice a year? Could you, we're not commenting on your priorities. We just want to know your
Just help
schedule.
us
Just
here.
help us know your schedule. And you would think that would be straightforward.
Amen.
But I know that the county is trying to do that, and so is Senator Ruxtable. So we'll get there together.
Yeah.
We will get there, but you're right, it's this third leg of the stool, and it could change everything.
And it's important to recognize, hey, take advantage of the opportunity.
That's right.
If that does make sense at this point, at the time of making the decision.
the roundabout project, I mean, even though we all have, we can have conversations about the roundabouts itself. But I think that's gonna help somewhat of us if it comes out, cleaning up some of the stuff we have along.
Yep.
Kings Highway,
Exactly.
but again, starts this year, next year, following year, 10 years, we don't know, when we'll be back.
In our lifetime, we don't-
Surprise.
Do you get the phone call and say, hey, we're starting?
Anything else on
I-
this?
Not on this, but on the other, I had a couple of
Well,
really small comments.
Should we say, should we more or less, as the finance committee, recommend this budget to the board? Is that a thing?
Pending,
You know,
No.
or we've been through this in some detail and,
pending the suggested additions.
Yeah.
And the completion of the developer
That's right.
CIP.
And then I would just say-
Which is a big part.
Yeah.
Mike, that point that you and I were talking about. I mean, I think it should be approved as we've seen with the updates that Kim just summarized. But also with the assumption that the operating reserve is not in as good a shape. Like, in other words, I don't think we should go into that analysis
Don't
right
make it
now.
sound like we're bragging.
Exactly, but I think so. I think we should say we're confident, but that is going to be something, you're gonna let them know about, and we're gonna wanna look at that. And again, they have choices related to that.
And again, this pertains to just this rolling out this year.
Yes, right. It's
So
gonna, it's
that's
gonna take,
extremely important.
it's several years to get that framework to be
Yeah.
in your DNA.
Right.
But yeah, so I think, so is that a vote,
Mhm.
Richard, that I think you want
Think
from
so.
us?
Yes.
It sounds like Bob made a motion.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the board that this budget as presented with a few clarifications is sound and should be adopted.
Second,
Sure.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And I can't vote, right? I'm ex officio.
Right.
I think I can run,
No.
but if I could vote.
I think, I
don't
think.
know.
I don't think
I
we-
think
I
the vote
think-
says that every member has a vote.
Is that right? Okay,
Well, on our committee.
How about Mike? Did Mike vote?
Mike.
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll vote yes.
I think
Well,
we,
there
I
you
think
go.
it's more of a consensus, not necessarily a vote, because we can't have an action.
Good way.
Well,
Because we're
okay, then,
advisory.
Yes.
Correct, we're
Yes.
advisory.
There's a
Mike
consensus.
probably-
Yes.
Mike uses the expression no strenuous.
Yes, yeah.
You know,
We're listening.
we think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Now, so we don't need an emergency next meeting. But we do have suggestions for the next meeting agenda. I don't know how closely people have looked at that aspect.
I had a few comments on future agenda topics,
Where was that?
and I had a comment on the resolution.
Here it is.
The finance committee. So on the, is that fine to go through an agenda topics?
Sure.
I just thought that number 2, wouldn't be just capital reserve, but it's all the reserves, like basically an agenda item on all the reserves. Operating. I also would want to add an audit.
Don't you have it?
I don't see audit. I mean, it could be under number 9, but I would call it out as an agenda topic.
How so?
To review it before.
To review it before it goes to the board. The
Oh,
finance
okay.
committee should look at the
Yeah,
audit, so you should schedule that when that occurs.
Yeah. But
But when
Tim
you
will
have
get
an
the
audit,
audit done.
It'll
through
be
the
in-
Auditor,
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
in draft form and then the auditor would present it.
To us.
Right.
how do you do it now in terms of the audit?
How do I do what?
When you have the auditor comes in,
Yeah.
when does he meet with you and him?
So they actually do it all remote.
Oh,
But,
they do?
Yep, so they go through their list of everything they need for all the documents. I send it over. They go through to make sure everything matches. They'll do any audit adjustments, any entries that sometimes I mess up stuff. And then they go through their draft and they give it to
Present you
me.
the draft.
And then I go through that to make sure the numbers match what I have. And then it goes to the board.
So you
2%.
do all of you don't do it within a committee.
Correct.
So sometimes organizations will do just what you said, and then they'll choose, in this case, it would be like Richard and one other person from the finance committee that sits with you when the auditor gives you the preliminary results.
Okay.
Then you do all the things you just described. And then when it's all clean and dandy, okay, even if there are management, in the letter, when they have the management things, they come and present to a finance committee. Finance committee gets that, and then it goes to the board. So the board knows that it has had that due diligence process.
Absolutely, we sort of did it at we had mayor, myself, several other people meet with our auditor, make sure that everything we had was covered and then given to. So, yeah, it's gotta be exactly as Amy
Okay.
said, I love that way. It has its merits.
Mhm, it does have its merits. Also doesn't put everything on your shoulders too.
Yeah, yeah,
Cause,
and it shouldn't be all on.
Yeah, you don't look like Bernie Madoff, but
plausible deniability.
Okay.
Bob, that was long enough ago. Kim might not even know who Bernie Madoff is.
Oh, come on.
For the audit, that might even be a whole policy.
Yes,
Mm-hmm,
yes.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's a good one.
yeah, I mean, we have the president of the board going through the wastewater treatment plant for a monthly inspection.
Mhm.
An annual audit seems pretty important too.
Well, the way we did it, as Amy was saying, is, we met with the auditor before, I had a conversation with the financial person myself, because I was in a position. And then we would have him do everything and come back and talk with us. Then we'd bring the mayor in. And we'd have that meeting. After that was confirmed, then that person would come back and have a presentation to the council. And I think this way, if everybody's eyes on it, and it just feels a lot cleaner.
Mhm.
And not all on your lap, believe me.
I apologize because I don't see that sheet, but one of the things that potentially would fall into the finance committee too is the investment piece. So the investment advisor
Is it
speaking.
on here?
Yes,
that on
it's
there?
number 6. Yep.
Okay, I'm
It's
sorry.
on
Yeah,
here, yeah.
okay,
Yep,
thank you.
absolutely. What's not on here based on an earlier conversation, but it's when those different wastewater options are continue to be worked on, do we look at the financial side of that?
I think we should.
Yeah, I think so too. It's
Yeah.
like the gorilla. It's like the city has Army Reserve. That's one of our big items that we've got to start to look at the financial, not the engineering technical, but what do those different scenarios mean to the finance committee?
But are we
Well, that
gonna
just
create a new
accepting it.
committee for construction in progress? That would be handled in that.
That would be
Yep.
handled in that in terms of the technical.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
The
finance side would
yeah.
say,
Yeah.
well, hey, technical committee, scenario 1 means this financially, so our reserves need to be this, scenario 2 is this. So,
Yeah, the finance committee, so you've got your this is that, I think I'm kind of articulating what Amy's saying. You've got your sort of bread and butter stuff. You got a budget to approve, you got audit to go through, you should be listening to the investment advisor, things that are on the financial side of the organization. But like we talked about last time, virtually every business decision that's made by the organization, small and big, has an impact on the finances. And we should understand that. We're not engineers, so we don't know the particulars about how a wastewater plant should be built. But the decision to build a wastewater plant will have a financial impact, and we should be assessing that. So I think I don't know whether you call them special projects or something along that line, but all these sort of things that aren't in the budget or in this long-term capital plan should somehow, they should still be run through the finance committee, at least to improve the
That's some kind
financial.
of ad hoc committee. to
It's
look
not a
at-
new committee, it's this
No?
committee, it's things that impact the finance of the financial
Right.
finance of the organization should have the finance committee look at it. That we're not doing the work. Kim's gonna hopefully present, I'm assuming, just to throw up BS here, the wastewater treatment plant, there might be 2 or 3 options. And they might have different options. It might have different impacts about how they're financed. In fact, a finance committee might also weigh in on whether we think doing a municipal bond offering or getting a bank loan or raising rates or drawing down operating reserves or, is the appropriate way to fund. There potentially be multiple funding options, and we could help weigh in on that as well.
And Kim, what the city's finance committee did as it finalized its advisory presentation to city council, because again, Army Reserve is our big item. We said, council, give us some guidance. What are the options you're considering? Because just what Mike said, we want to now start looking at the financial implications of those. But we don't want to presume we know, because we don't know. We're the finance committee.
So I would say the board is working very hard to get a a resolution
Yeah.
to our wastewater treatment plant, but we are waiting for other people to make decisions.
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
But just to finish up on that little piece, these are kind of ad hoc things, Richard, that, they're not like a normal schedule, every February, we're going to go through a budget, or every whatever time period, we're going to go through an audit. There's has to be some flexibility too around some of these big decision things that sort of come up over the course of the year.
And the only other thing I had a comment on in terms of the packet was the resolution related to, city regarding the creation of a finance committee on section 2. I think it's good that the finance committee, and I gotta go look at our city one too, to make sure that you always list the treasurer of the city or some city rep.
Mhm.
And that we do that too. I gotta double check on the city side. So you are me on the
Right.
city side, but I didn't see that in section 2. That it was called out. So imagine, we have a good working relationship, thanks to lots of other work that was done in the past. We want to keep that going. So we're keeping good communication between the two. But if you were a whole new finance committee, would they know that? I wouldn't know. So I would list it in that one. It's a member.
I thought I think in one of the board meeting minutes presentation of who's who on the finance
Yeah.
committee, that the cities had the ex officio.
Ex officio.
Was
No,
ex
another
officio.
document. Absolutely right. I've always
And
seen
it
it.
turned out to
Nope.
be the treasurer. I don't know that it was, that's the way it was
I think it was written
described,
as the treasurer, right?
but I don't know if that's. I guess it is critical. It's much more important as opposed to just a council person,
That's correct.
because we want the financial.
You want the financial side.
That's right.
So it's either the treasurer
So
or
it has
the,
to be, well, when you look at
Probably
the
is the
city,
treasurer.
yes.
Yeah, treasure.
yeah, because the finance chair may not always be a council president, so I think it should be treasurer. I think it was written somewhere. I've seen it on the
Yeah.
That
document,
sounds familiar.
but it wasn't in this.
It might have just been
resolution.
in minutes.
Maybe.
Yeah, but it is the intention that it's a financial,
Mhm.
financially competent, not necessarily an expert, but somebody
Yeah.
that's,
Somebody was thinking about money.
yes,
Somebody knows what money means.
yeah.
Yeah, so that would just be the one addition that I thought on that. I didn't know if that was a discussion for a future meeting.
Does anyone know, Calvin wanted this on here.
Mhm.
Do we know why?
We wanted to make sure that we followed
The rules.
the rules.
Mean the guidelines?
Every single
Which one?
requirement,
The resolution.
like 1 year,
Yeah.
tenure. Sending committee meeting minutes to the board within 20 days of the financial committee meeting. And so on, which I, that was it. And then the list of, hey, we should, we didn't do this adherence to the number 2. And we should be looking at the financial policies. And the 1 to 9 is the same as the 1 to 9 on the small print.
Right, so the one addition then, section 5. Would,
Right.
based on our conversation, is that audit should be identified in that list.
Yep.
Either in a number or it's its own number. Just the thing, the process we're talking about,
Well,
right?
my feeling is we should make a new list
Okay.
that is more functional, has the financial architecture in mind as an aid, a tool, and so on, and include the auditor and some of the things that we've talked about. And then have a revised resolution proposed to the board.
Good idea. That's a good idea.
Rather than try
Rather
to,
than trying to muck
Yeah,
around with
yes.
changing a line. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. I agree.
so, I mean, the suggestion of, hey, we really should be doing what we said and we're authorized, just from a transparency, that's valid, but maybe we rework it so that it's much better aligned with everything that we are learning and putting into motion.
Makes sense. Yeah, I agree.
So that can be on a future meeting.
Yes,
After.
And probably should come up at our next meeting, like we should get that and
Yeah.
figured out.
and I will talk to Mike Hoffman to see, what's kind of the procedure of accomplishing that,
Mhm.
make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot.
Exactly.
And clearly the existing policy on the guidelines for investment is a flawed document. It's to be,
Well, when you talk about investments, you can't use a 2019
Yeah.
piece of paper.
and we'll figure
For
that out.
reality.
We will figure that out. I mean, again, it's something that's needs to be done. So there's our guideline is put in place that reflect our current
Right.
financial environment.
Richard, maybe put Kim on the spot a little bit, but we presented a very incomplete financial architecture at the last meeting. It feels to me like if we can get that updated, it'd be a good discussion with this committee, with those numbers really fully laid out. But the push on Kim a little bit is, what do you think from a time perspective to get that done so we can get this in front of the group?
Well, budget is pretty much complete. So I'll have time from in March. And then until the end of April. That will be more of a lull time that I can work on that and also train Jen to take some more stuff for me. And then we'll go into the audit after that, which it is an expedited audit because we have federal funds that we need to have it done within 4 months. Which we usually have 6 months. So I'm not sure how much time that will take. Up in
So that
those
takes May,
months.
June, July. May, June.
Mhm.
It'll definitely take May. And it's gonna run into June, it's just how much of June.
Mhm.
And then July should be the presentation. With the adoption at the end of July. So I will have about 6 weeks, 7 weeks. That I can concentrate on it again, and
Well,
then it'll just be sporadic.
I don't want to be naive, but that sounds long enough to be able to get that done. If you can,
I am optimistic as well,
Yeah.
but that is, I did a personality test, I am an optimist, so.
so with that process, this is kind of the way I'm sort of thinking about it, and just see if everybody, it just kind of makes sense. But I think there's a bunch of things policy wise that are going to fall out of that structure once Kim gets it populated. For example, how is she allocating costs across the different utilities, for example? There's the reserve buckets. Are we all comfortable? What we've tried to do in that structure is to say, this is the reserve. We've tried to measure the reserve policy as it's written today. We haven't actually asked whether that's the appropriate reserves. For example, with everything changing in government, this group might be feeling we need to have more reserves with some of the risks of loss of funding in certain areas. So I feel like getting that structure done is going to open up a whole lot of questions that the finance committee is probably going to weigh in on. And a lot of them are ultimately going to be are going to have policy implications, either revisiting old policies and updating them for today's, environment, or creating new policies in areas where we actually haven't had policies before. But we need to do, it's kind of, we got to get that foundation done before we can sort of move to the next step.
You said you had 6 weeks?
Yes,
you thought?
until about mid-April.
Okay, so 42 pages divided by 6 is 7 pages a day.
You'll be fine.
No worries.
And there is a lot of heavy lifting that's already been done. That whole capital budget for the 10-year out, I think Kim has done, and the team has done a lot of work on that. That's one of the biggest kind of raw expenditures. I feel like there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of information that's already been in there. I think we've got to fill some holes, but it's not from scratch.
I'd go even faster.
Yeah.
Well, there are things you can do in parallel with that too. I mean, so that's your time frame, but we probably ought to be talking about the investment, the way our money is invested.
You can only put that off for so long.
Yeah, I mean,
You want money, you gotta look at your money.
Be good to know for sure what money you need. And
Well, I think to Bob's point, there's one question is how big should the pools be, but it is a separate question about how those pools should be invested. And I think we could have that discussion now, or that doesn't have to wait around to determine whether the pool should be 8 million or 10 million.
No, you can't wait on that.
Yeah, so we can have that conversation Bob's looking for. I think, it's not being held up, I guess I would say, by this. Richard, I don't know if you would agree. Maybe something along the lines of that conversation you and I had yesterday.
So let's make that the agenda for the next meeting.
And in the meantime, don't invest in crypto.
Yep. I'll make.
Which one?
Did you want to schedule the next meeting?
Yes.
When is your board budget meeting?
Next Wednesday?
It's
presentation
The
will be
presentation
Wednesday.
is next Wednesday, okay. And that's at, oh yeah, 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
I just wanted to listen into what the questions would be. But I didn't.
How far out would you like the next meeting?
Beginning of March.
Okay. How about the 10th?
I was just looking at that day.
Well, I won't be here because I got cataract surgery.
Oh, okay. We can go the week before if you want.
Richard, are you liking these meetings at 10 in the morning?
Yes.
I like them at 10.
Yeah, if that works for
Probably last
everybody.
minute things if I
Yeah, I'll
forgot
vote on
anything.
the 10 too.
Yeah,
That first week in March, I can do any morning at that time except for Thursday.
I can do Wednesday, but I could do Monday, the 3rd.
The 3rd?
How does that look?
That's great for me.
I'm gonna say yes now until I check something when I get home. I'll get back to you.
So
That's
10 to noon
the
on the
3rd,
3rd.
March 3rd.
March.
Amy, did you have any other mornings open that week?
Let's see, I'm just gonna have that one in. I could also, I would have to leave at like 10 to noon, but I have the 4th open, the 5th, I'm booked all day. And I've got to keep budget, and that's it actually for me, sorry. Monday's great. And Tuesday I could work around, but the other days that week
Well, then you have a 10 on Tuesday.
so the 3rd it is.
Monday. Monday sounds good.
the 3rd.
Hopefully Carolyn can make it.
Yeah, I'll check something when I get home and I'll call in.
If it had to move the second, I don't know, after cataract surgery.
I'm not as
Are you
good as
like
I
a
used to be. I
day,
used to
or
hold
would you
my
like not to
calendar
have
all
a
the
meeting
time.
next
Now I
week?
don't.
I have some. I'll have to
Don't
go.
blame you.
No,
On the 11th,
I do not live by my calendar anymore, so
the 11th.
On the 10th,
I'm just gonna
10th is your surgery.
give you a
yeah,
call back.
11th I can show up.
So should we do the 11th as a,
The 3rd is better.
the 3rd's better, but if we had to the next week, what does the 11th look like?
So the 11th, I actually have a board meeting for Children's
Okay.
Beach House.
We're
So
gonna
at that
work the
time,
3rd.
Yeah, I think you should be well up low.
The 3rd, okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'm
Come
putting
in
it in.
that.
What's your number on it?